Welcome back, everybody, to the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. I am your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer for Sports Illustrated, Hondo Carpenter. This guy's our assistant beat writer. This man is a tremendous writer. He is a great father, terrific husband, and I'm just glad to call him my friend, the great Zeke Trezevan. Zeke, good to have you, bud.
Hey, good to see you, Hondo. You doing okay?
I'm doing great. It's great to talk to you. We have so much Raiders to dig into today. We were very open that they were not done with free agency after the draft. Things had slowed down because they needed to see how the draft played out, and it did. It played out very well for them. They're still able to fill some holes. Post June 2nd, they're going to be right around just north of $30 million in cap money. That includes the rookies and the free agents they just signed. So, literally, just north of $30 million of plenty of room. Now you got to keep money for a rainy day. You got to keep money for extensions, but still, all of how the Raiders have handled this offseason, I give Tom Telesco an A. I'd love to hear your evaluation on all that he's done since he arrived in the desert.
He's been very very focused. It seems like he had a plan when he came in, and they've stuck to it. I would say everything he's been doing has been very leveled. He hasn't gone too overboard in terms of the moves that he's made, which is just what the Raiders needed. I have been saying that all offseason. Hey guys, don't overdo it, right? Don't overthink it. And Telesco has been doing just enough. He's been filling holes. He's been adding depth to the team. I think he's done as about as good of a job as you could do with what he was handed, and when he took over the job. So I think there's reason for excitement, especially with it being only his first year. I can only imagine what he's going to do in year 2, year 3.
I agree with you. Now, I want to get into something, Zeke. Um, and we're in the communication business, and I feel like I failed in communicating something. So MJ Richardson was on this show MJ Devonshire was on this show last week, the Raiders' seventh round pick. And I talked about him being 6'2" in the 4.3 speed. Now, at Pitt, prior to Pitt and at Pitt, he hit 4.3. Then he was 4.4 in the postseason, but 4.3 is what he's done and been clocked at many times. So when I mentioned that 4.3, that was fine. But he's just under 6 foot tall. But when I talked about the 6'2", I was referring to his arm length. His arm length is that of a 6'2". He's got longer arms than come with him. So it allows him the way he is. I think this guy, now he's a seventh round pick. And you know this, when you go into a draft and you're looking at it before it starts, you hope your sixth and seventh rounders can make the practice squad. With the 4.3 speed that he's demonstrated and been clocked at many times before, and those long arms, and his commitment to special teams, I think this kid has a shot to obviously make the practice squad. I think he's got a shot if he continues to progress on special teams. I mean, what more can you ask for from a seventh round pick?
I mean, not a whole lot. I mean, like you said, most 7 round picks are fighting for a spot on the roster, really, period. But between his athleticism and, like you said, the things he can do on special teams, that makes him a valuable asset. I think when it comes to special teams players, I think they kind of get overlooked by the general public in terms of how important they are. You need dependable special teams players. I don't think people realize that. Special teams is called special for a reason, right? So I think in terms of the length that he brings, the size that he brings, that's going to help him in terms of special teams, obviously. But the position he plays, I think to be long and to be quick, I think that makes up for being a seventh round pick at that position. There's some things you cannot coach. And, obviously length and size is one of them, and speed as well. So I think he's going to be good long term, but mainly special teams right now. And then you got to develop them over time. Like every seventh round draft pick has to be developed. So I think it was a good pick. I think it's going to take time to really see him grow. But I think 2, 3, 4 years down the road, he could be somebody that's a huge asset for the team.
I'm going to talk to you about a guy that I think was the steal of this draft, Trey Taylor. Now, let's talk about Trey, because here he is again, another seventh rounder. And they had a significant higher grade on him than seventh round. And this is a guy had multiple offers, chose to go to Air Force, Zeke, because he wanted the better education, wanted to serve his country. This is a guy, national award winner, Bolitnikoff. I mean, excuse me, not Bolitnikoff, Thorpe Award winner. Sorry, I don't know why I would call wide receiver. I know he's a defensive back. Thorpe Award winner. This is a kid, maturity, ability, all of it is there. I think this kid, and you get him in the 7th round with a major potential to be a steal in this draft.
Yeah. So I think with him, it's twofold, but I think he perfectly kind of demonstrates what it is Telesco is looking for in terms of on the field and off the field. I think obviously his on the field skills speaks for itself. You don't win the awards he won without being skilled on the field, but to choose to go to, a school that most people probably wouldn't choose to go to amongst other offers simply because you want a better education. And you still were able to shine. I think that speaks to the character, the type of character that Telesco is looking for in players. This guy didn't go to a bigger school that he probably easily could have gone to and had a little bit easier of a ride. He took the tough route because he wanted a better education. So what's that say about a football player, right? A lot of guys don't necessarily care about their education like that. And he made a life-changing decision off of wanting a better education. So I think it fits what Telesco is looking for on and off the field.
What's more stunning? Him picking a school because he wanted the tougher education, or you when you try to remind us that you were a defensive end?
It's definitely me talking about being a defensive end as I walk into an NFL locker room with actual defensive ends.
To tell you, I crack up every time I see you standing next to Max
Yeah.
or Malcolm.
When I'm walking past some of the offensive linemen, I'm like, what would I have done with it? Like, there's not even a chance in hell that I could have done anything here. So it is pretty funny.
Let's go to the 6th round. They get Dylan Lobin. This is a running back out of New Hampshire. A lot of Austin Eckler in him. This is a guy that I have been told. Now, I have not been told this about Taylor and Devonshire, but I've been told, I was almost within an hour or two of him being drafted by someone in the organization, he's going to make this team. This is a kid that can do a lot. He's gutsy. He's tough. How tall are you? Are you 5'9"?
Oh my goodness, don't do that to me, Hondo. 5'11", baby. 5'11". 5'11". Every bit of it. Every bit of it. Hey, I'm small, but listen, I'm about average height, okay?
Okay, but when you and I stand next to each other,
yes.
it's like you and Colton Miller.
Oh my God, yes, for sure. Colton's such a large human being.
I laugh because I look Colton right in the eye, and then him and I will look over, and there you are down here. Okay.
Okay, guys.
Anyways, Dylan Lobin is the Zeke Shannon size in this draft, but he's a running back, punt returner, kick returner, put his nose on a football. He's tough. He's scrappy. 6th rounder. They think has a shot at making this team. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think in terms of what he brings to the team, long term is what he's going to be about in terms of making sure that the running back position for the Raiders is set long term. I think the Raiders are going the route that most other teams are going at the running back position, running back by committee. And what that means is that you have to kind of start looking 2, 3, 4 years down the road, whereas before you only had to look 1 or 2 years down the road. So I think what he's going to do is he's going to make sure he's going to bring the talent that down the road, the Raiders still don't have to necessarily overpay for a running back. So I think this is one of those things where he's going to make the team, obviously, in the immediate. But I think come 3 years down the road, when he's in that backfield growing, you're going to see that he was a diamond in the rough for Telesco.
In the 5th round, the Raiders made a selection that I am sure you have already had pajamas made with his likeness. You have been clamoring for a linebacker. You have been, I mean, dear Lord, I almost knew when I would read our site what stories were your Raiders still need a linebacker.
Go for it.
Okay. When they got Tommy freaking Eichenberg in the 5th round, I mean, this guy's the epitome of toughness. He is everything you want in Robert Spillane, Max Crosby, Christian Wilkinson. I mean, Was there a happier guy in Las Vegas than Zeke Trezevant when they picked
Not at
Tommy
all.
Eichenberg?
Listen, not at all. And listen, I'll say this: I'm not necessarily good at picking who's going to go where in the draft. But when I did my mock draft, I'm pretty sure I had a linebacker going exactly where Tommy was drafted in terms of for the Raiders. So I like the pick. I love the pick. He fits the Raiders defense. He really does, and he adds important depth. And obviously, Spillane never misses time. He played 97% of the snaps last year. Diablo missed, I think, a game or 2 games in last season. So those guys never really missed time. But when you're talking about the NFL, that's 17 weeks. Anything can happen. And if one of those guys goes down, the Raiders just didn't have that much depth behind them. So adding Tommy to the team is huge. His skill set is it's perfect, right? It's literally like having 2 Spillanes out there, on the team, basically. So I like the fact that they got him at the 5th round. They didn't have to reach for him, and they got him after they filled in other holes on the team. So I like the signing. Like you said, I've been kind of hammering home that they needed a linebacker, and I was definitely pretty happy when they took him.
In the 4th round, they got DeCamerion Richardson and out of Maryland. Now, this kid is actually 6'2" tall. He also runs a 4.3 40. But he started 2 years. Let me. I want to just double check this. I mean, I said Maryland. I didn't mean Maryland. I meant Mississippi State. We've had on people to scout him who covered him and know him, so there's no sense really re-going over him. But he's a phenomenal player. But then I want to get to the 3rd round pick, Delmar Glaze. Now, DJ, let me tell you about this kid. Okay, he is 2.8%. 2.8% of his pass blocking plays got pressure on the quarterback. 2.8%. But let me get into what really set this kid apart. He gets to the Senior Bowl. And at the Senior Bowl, he struggled the first couple days. And then some coaches helped him. Now, let's go back because a lot of fans don't understand this. When you're at Maryland in the Big Ten or you're at Mississippi State in the SEC, you're going to face a lot of great players. It's 2 of the best conferences. But not every play and not every week. When you go to the Senior Bowl, it is all NFL players. So the level of competition is through the roof. Delmar Glaze gets their struggles first couple days, gets some coaching, and then dominates the rest. In fact, I was told from day 3 on through the actual Senior Bowl, he was the best tackle. He dominated. The Raiders love his fight, his fury, but they also liked his coachability. What did you think of DJ Glaze?
Yeah, I think, like you said, the word is coachability. And especially when you're talking about, a mid to late round draft pick, because most of the time those guys are not going to be, I don't want to say ready to go, but they're not necessarily starting players for you right off the bat. So you need a player that can be coachable. And I think that's why they were willing to maybe quote unquote reach for him a little bit. It was because of how coachable he showed that he can be. And honestly, when it comes to sports, especially football, sometimes that makes up for the lack of certain talents that you may or may not have, is the fact that you can learn. There's a lot of talented guys that can't be coached, right? So, you kind of look at this as the vice versa. He might lack a little bit of talent in certain areas, but he can be coached up. That's the term. They got to coach him up. So between that and what he showed on tape before the Senior Bowl, I think it was a smart move. It was a good move. I also think that people are forgetting that the move was made to draft him because of how many other offensive linemen were being taken right before his pick or right before the Raiders selected him. So the Raiders kind of had to make something happen quickly. So I think between what he's shown on tape and then what he did at the Senior Bowl, like you said, if you can turn it around amongst nothing but NFL caliber talent coming into the league with you, that says a lot to not just the players with you, but the coaches that were there.
Now, you and I are aware of this because we've talked about Delmar before, but the thing that got me was there was a list of offensive tackles. Obviously, Alt and Fuaga were dogs at the top, but there was a list of tackles. If we come out with one of these guys, we're happy. And one of the things that people don't understand about draft strategy is there would be times maybe like Delmar, they took him because there was a run on tackles, and the list of guys that they were willing to take was dwindling. But corner still had a lot of guys there. If it had been reversed and been a run on corners, and tackles, and they could have got him in the fourth. I think sometimes people misunderstand strategy. What do you think of that?
Yeah, strategy, and I think people just misunderstand just how the draft shakes out, right? Like you can want this player or that player, but if the teams in front of you took them, well, now you kind of have to kind of go back to the drawing board, and you have to do it quickly because you're on the clock, right? So I agree with you. I think a lot of people sometimes forget that, hey, you might want that player that's, a little bit better than the guy that you got, but I'd rather take the guy that you got than not get anybody at all at the position that you need. And I think that's a little bit of where the Raiders were. So it makes sense to me. You definitely have to strategize. But I do think that people forget sometimes that a lot more goes into who you select on draft day than who you want to draft.
All right, so let's turn our attention now. Friday is rookie camp. The rookies are going to be in there this week, and we're going to have a lot of video on Friday from rookie camp. So let's talk about that because I think it's very important. You're not going to learn a lot at rookie camp. There's a lot of guys that are going to be invited who aren't going to make the team, who are trying to fight to make it. A lot of guys, but they're looking for something. They're for the guys that are drafted or the guys that are key, that are key. I'm trying to how I want to key UDFAs. That's really important. Talk to me, Zeke, if you would. What are you going to be looking for at rookie camp this week?
Yeah, so listen, at rookie camp, my eyes are going to be on those undrafted free agents. I'm a underdog kind of guy. So I'm always kind of looking for the guys that don't necessarily get the most pub, if you will. So I just want to see who stands out, right? Who's making a name for themselves, or who at least, because as you know, right, when you your eyes don't lie, right? The eye test doesn't usually lie, and I want to see who just pops out, right? I'm not going to look for anything specific, but who pops out to me on Friday. So looking to see what these guys bring, looking to see strengths, weaknesses from all of the guys, and see what additions the Raiders have the potential of making.
Now, Zeke, I want to talk to you about something, and I need people to be adults. We all know that what OJ Simpson was accused of. But you can go back and talk about OJ Simpson's playing career and talk about football, and it doesn't mean we're saying what allegedly happened or didn't happen. He was not convicted of it, but we're not doing that. But when the Raiders are looking at two tight end sets, 12 personnel, one running back, two tight ends, they're studying Aaron Hernandez and Rob Gronkowski. Now, we know about Aaron Hernandez. We also know that there's no reason to think Michael Mayer or Brock Bowers are character issues like that. Please, we're not associating the off the field. But just on the field, when you start thinking that the Raiders are reviewing several, but that in particular, dual tight end sets and how it can make a offensive attack like the Raiders better, should that not send excitement through Raider Nation?
I mean, yes, it should. I mean, you got to think about, what it allows you to do on an offense. Let's take a step back. Think about what kind of a position it puts a defensive coordinator in, right? Like you don't know if Mayer or Brock is going to be the one blocking. You don't know if they're going to run play action off that. You don't know if they're going to run the ball from that formation. And that's before you even get into the Devontae Adams, the Jacoby Myers, the Galla, before you get into all the other receiving threats that they've added, right? It gives them versatility. I think that was one of their biggest weaknesses last season on offense was, I don't want to say they were one-dimensional, but they were maybe, 1.5 dimensional. There wasn't really much that they could do. If you stop their their first main plan on offense, the Raiders, they had trouble last season. I think with where they're going right now in terms of the two tight end set, it plays to a lot of their players' strengths in terms of both the tight ends, in terms of your running back, in terms of your receivers. But I also think it makes defenses have to, consider, have to worry about what do you do? Who do you stop first, right? So I like where they're going with it. I think it makes sense on a lot of different levels. And I think, again, another one of their weaknesses last year, and the players spoke to this, was that they weren't being put in the best position to succeed. I think with the roster they're putting together, especially on offense, they're being put in a position to succeed.
Now, I was told by an NFC official, I'm not going to say if it was an executive or a coach, but it was one of those. I was told this recently, and let me grab my phone. I want to read you a text. You ready?
Yes, sir.
This person reached out to me, and this is what they said. This is the first time that we've publicly talked about this. Hondo, here's something that I think you should be talking about, and I think it's going to make Getsy even better. I think the Raiders will add to the playbook dual plays. Let me explain what that means. That when they get to the line of scrimmage, based on defense, there can be two plays called. The tight ends will read it and know what to do. Imagine if nobody else on the field knows, other than the quarterback and the two tight ends, the actual play. So if there's a guy lined up in an under, it could say something for one tight end and not the other. If he's in an over, could speak to the other tight end. Literally, I think the Raiders may be one of only 6 or 7 teams in the NFL next year that on multiple occasions have multiple plays called.
Versatility. Versatility. I really think it just go. There's so many different things they can do, not necessarily out of that formation, right? Because they've been. It's not like it's the first time they're running the formation, but with the players that they have to run the formation, to run the offense, and then you put in a coordinator like Getsy. I really think, again, the word is versatility in terms of the talent that they're bringing at the tight end position. There's so much they can do between blocking, running routes, whatever it may be. They've got plenty of options next year on offense.
So can you imagine? I want to put this in layman's terms. Them coming to the line of scrimmage. And Mayer knows my job's to block or run based on this. I mean, to go out for a pass. And Bowers knows my job's to do X, A, or B. And they come to the line, and only them and the quarterback know what they're going to do.
Yeah. Yeah. It puts defensive coordinators, it puts defenders in a tough spot, right? Because they're built on, reading their keys, et cetera, et cetera. Well, what do you do when you become the key as a defender, right? You know what I mean? Like that changes things for you. And then I think the fact that Bowers and Mayer both are great at running routes, they're both great at blocking. You can't tee off on, hey, this guy's here, or hey, that guy's there, he's probably going to do this. No, you can't. As a defender, you can't even do that. Listen, I'm excited to watch it, right? I think we're not going to see any games like we saw last season where, against the Minnesota Vikings. So I think it's a lot to look forward to.
All right. I want to quickly get into this. The Raiders go out and sign Galla, the former Cowboy wide receiver. Now we know he was very good for a time. Now it's only a 1-year deal. So they're betting on him to be back. All physicals are passed. He's rip-roaring, ready to go. Talk to me, Jacoby Myers, Trey Taylor, Devontae Adams, Gallup. There is so much talent in one football.
Yeah, and that's so I look at it like this because you always have to consider that, right? There's only one football, a lot of receiving options. But I look at it like the fact that there are so many options, especially if they're on the field at the same time, that should open up some things for everybody that might not have been opened up for them last year. I think with Gallup specifically, the good news for him is he doesn't necessarily have to come in and be the guy. If you can have Gallup come in and he's your third or fourth best receiver, I think you're in good hands. And that's before you take into consideration that you can still throw the ball to either one of your tight ends or your running back out of the backfield. So I think it just adds to what the Raiders can do, right? They can throw it to any of 4 or 5 guys, 6 guys on the field at any given time, depending on what they run. So I think it just adds to them, to what they can do. And it's going to make their offense that much more powerful next season.
So I want to end with this, Zeke. Shannon and I were having dinner the other night to someone that came into the bright lights of the big city here. And one of the best defensive minds, not the best, but I would say one of the best defensive minds in football. And him and his wife and me and my wife were having dinner. And they're not on the Raiders schedule next year. So I just said to him, the Raiders aren't on your schedule. How would you defend this team? Listen to what he told me. He said, I won't let Devontae Adams beat me. He's too good. He goes, so I'm going to bracket him all the time, and I'm going to bracket Jacoby. He said, and I'm going to stop the run. So I'm going to make those 2 young tight ends prove to me they can beat me, or a third wide receiver, a Trey Taylor. And he really laid out for me. In fact, I'm going to be writing about this and talking about this more in a further podcast. But he said to me, the quicker the Raiders get the tight ends and a third receiver involved, because if they're able to get them involved, he said, quote, it's unstoppable.
It's unstoppable. I'm sorry. That's what I was thinking. I was thinking to myself, you can't stop it. Like, what do you mean? You can't stop it. You cannot stop it. I'm sorry.
He said, he goes, they're going to have to prove to me, though, the two young tight ends. He goes, I think they're both good, but they're both unproven in the NFL. He goes, we saw what Zeke could do, and we know they're committed to the run. So my deal is you have to commit to the run, commit to Jacoby, and commit to Devontae. He goes, Trey Tucker's done some stuff, but he's going to have to prove consistent. The tight ends have done stuff in college, have to prove consistent. But he said to me, if the Raiders get it all in and they're able to execute, they're unstoppable. I'm telling you, we don't know how the tight ends are going to do. We certainly can project. I think they're both going to be really good. I think Trey Tucker takes a step this year, a lot like Henry Duggs did from year 1 to year 2. I believe in Trey. I don't have any issues there. But these guys who we believe in now, if they take that step with that Raiders defense, Zeke,
Yeah.
think about it.
Yeah.
Think
100%.
about it.
Yeah, listen, I'm right there with you. I'm right there with you. And first and foremost, the word execute is what it all comes down to, right? Because the coaches can call the right plays, but if you don't execute, it doesn't matter. So that's first and foremost. But out of all of that, I think the X factor out of everything that was mentioned is the running game. I think if they get that running game going, I mean, you got to think, the more times you run the ball, the less you have to show the different routes, the less routes you have to run, the less execution you have on completing passes because you're just handing the ball off. So I think if they can get that running game going to a dependable factor, that's going to open up so many other things. However, I think they're set up on offense now to where they don't have to completely base the entire offense on the run. It's not, we're going to run to open up the pass. It's literally, we can run or pass. We just want to kind of get our running game going first if we can.
No, I'm listening.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were about to say something. But yeah, I think in terms of where they are, I think if they get that running game going, it's going to make it to where, hey, you can bracket Jacoby, you can bracket Devontae if you want to, but that's just going to leave things open for Zamir and the running backs and the tight ends to do their thing. So again, it goes back to how well they're built on offense. You can try to stop one or two things, but you can't stop everything.
I agree with you. And I'm going to tell you another thing, Zeke, that this guy said to me. He goes, what would concern me about the Raiders is if they just come out trying to pound the football. He goes, that works in my defense as a defender, because with all those weapons, he goes, the key to them is and he's a defensive mind. He goes, but if I was an offensive coordinator, you want 50% run to pass on first down. Because if I know you're going to throw on 3rd and 8, we all know that. I know you're going to throw on 3rd and 5 and 3rd and 6. So if you get into a pattern of running all the time on first down, then I can cheat in the box. He said, but if it's a 50-50 mix, I'm just telling you, I can't wait to share more details. I'm sitting there on my phone. I'm taking notes of everything he said. And I said, do you mind if I share this? He goes, no, I don't play you next year. He just gave, and this is a brilliant defensive mind. He said, I don't care. He goes, I'm not playing you next year. He goes, I think this is, the Raiders probably know this. Share this with their fans. I can't wait to get into more details. It's going to be really cool, isn't it?
Yeah, listen, I'm looking forward to it, and I think so that's kind of what I was trying to say a moment ago as well, right? You know, the last couple of seasons, it was, hey, hand the ball off, and we kind of build off of that. I think where they're building this roster right now is, hey, we can now pass to set up the run, or we can run to set up the pass. And like you said, hey, if anybody or everybody knows the Raiders are just about to run the ball, it's usually pretty easy to stop it, right? Or at least at the very least, it makes the defense's job easier. That's not going to be the case next year.
This is going to be fun. All right. Minshew, Brown, and O'Connell. They're going to go at it. It's going to be fun to watch. Obviously, it's AO4's job to lose.
Yes.
Everyone's going to get a full place to compete. But, man, I don't want to rush the summer, but I'm so looking forward to training camp. Now, let's talk about that. What do you think of a moving training camp to Costa Mesa?
Interesting. I've got more questions than anything, in terms of how it would work logistically. But at the same time, I think from a fan stand base, I think it's going to go a long way. Not necessarily a long way, right? Because the fan base always travels. Don't get me wrong, but I think it helps them connect with the fan base that is in California, out in Costa Mesa. So I think it's going to be pretty cool.
And no matter what anybody says, the Raiders will never disassociate from California. That is their roots. It's who they are. And I don't think they should. And I think this is and listen, this is going to cost Mark Davis millions and millions of dollars to move everybody there. Hotel rooms, when he's got everything in Henderson already. This
Mhm.
shows his commitment. Hey, the government maybe didn't want us in Cali, but
Mhm.
you did, and we wanted to be there. It didn't work.
Mhm.
This is our olive branch to our fan base. I think it is a brilliant move by Mark Davis.
Agreed, agreed. And like you said, you're talking about one of the most historical teams in the NFL, and you'll never be able to completely remove the ties between the Raiders and the state of California. That's
And
never
they
going
don't
to happen.
want to. And I think that's cool.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. That was the precursor to where they are now. Obviously, Mark and his family and the Raiders themselves have a lot of ties there. So I like it. It's a great idea if you ask me.
What I love is the Ravens hate Cleveland. Cleveland hates the Ravens.
Mm.
They used to be
Yes.
obviously in the same franchise. Raiders move. The owner still loves Cali and the Cali fans, and the Cali fans still love them. The only one in that stood out with no love was the government.
Exactly, exactly. So I like the idea, keeping that bond and that connection between the state of California is going to go a long way for the fan base. And I know it means a lot to all the Californians that grew up as Raiders fans 20, 30, 40 years ago. It means a lot. So I think it's a good idea.
All right, Zeke, tell everybody where to find you on social media.
Yes, sir. On Twitter, on X, excuse me, EZ Trezevant. So T as in Tom, REZE, V as in Victor, A as in Apple, N as in Nancy, T as in Tom. EZ
All right, and
Trezevant.
don't forget Zeke. All right, Easy Trezevant. Remember, you can follow me on IG at Hondo SR on X. When you go to @Hondo Carpenter and read everything Zeke and I and the entire team have to say, when you go to si.com/NFL/Raiders. We'll be back.